Hello and welcome to Strange Pathways. I am your host, Scott Mort. I hope you're having a great week. Mine was a little rough this week. Injured my hand, injured my knee, both on the same side. The knee is doing better. The hand has, not even, it's one of those deals as I'm getting older, not even quite certain what I'd done to it. But I'm on the mend, slowly, surely. Our first tale is going to take us back to the 1980s. Geneva on the Lake in Ohio, just on the coast of Lake Erie. Now there is a gentleman. At this point he's a very young gentleman, but this gentleman's name is John Giancola. John Giancola recently reached out to a Singular Fortean Society, which is where I've gotten the story from, www.singularfortean.com. Now, John's family would stay at Geneva on the Lake every summer. They would go up there to a cabin. Now, there was this one time. There's these rock piers. And John, little John is out there. He's playing on an inner tube. And he looks about 20 yards further out into the water. And he sees something staring at him. There's a head peeking up above the water. It's kind of, the water's up to the upper lip. So it's just a head from the mouth up. Now, John realizes he's the only kid out there. He's confused at what he may be seeing. He watches it for about 30 seconds. He looks out onto the beach where his family is. Everyone's still on the beach. So it's nobody from his family. He turns around and the head is gone. John pushes it aside. Maybe he didn't see what he thought he saw. Maybe it was a log. Maybe it was a piece of garbage floating out in Lake Erie. And I remember Lake Erie at the time. Lake Erie now is beautiful, but in the 80s, Lake Erie was pretty trashed up. So he just pushes that aside. He just pushes it aside. But he can't get it out of his head. He spends the rest of the day watching because it kind of unnerved him. Now, an investigator, Tobias Wayland, he sent Giancola a list of questions. He wanted to know more about this sighting. Now, Giancola says he was around 11 or 12 years old. So he's figuring it's somewhere in the summer of 85 or 86. At the time, Giancola was the only one in the water. And out there, he said the pier that he was on, it was too deep for an adult to stand. So this creature, whatever it was, it had to be floating. The eyes, though. It had larger eyes that were black. And he said it felt like this thing was looking back at him. Only lasted about 10 seconds. Now, John says he doesn't remember anything else paranormal happening, but he did get weird vibes in the cottage. Just something about the cottage made him uneasy. And I think we can all understand that. For example, I have a town that makes me feel uneasy. It's a little town. Nothing bad has ever happened to me there. But for whatever reason, the town of Laughlintown, PA, makes me feel very uneasy. I can't explain it. So, what is it that John could have seen? Is there a species of merfolk living in Lake Erie? Was it a simple misidentification? John himself doesn't believe it was an otter. He said the ears in an otter kind of stick up. Could it have been a turtle? You know, a shell just kind of floating on the water. Maybe some unusual spots in the back. I don't believe John would have mistaken a turtle for that. I will say that Lake Erie does have reports of a monster. It's known as Bessie. Some call it South Bay Bessie. Others call it the Lake Erie Monster. But I mean, this thing has been cited as far back as 1793. It's the most recent sighting. The most recent sighting appears to be 1993. A lot of reports say that this creature has a dog-shaped head, dark eyes, a pointy tail. Is what John Giancola saw possibly the Lake Erie monster? I think no matter what he saw, it could be classified as paranormal. For our second tale, I'm sure you're going to notice the audio quality skyrocket. As I said, I'm in a fair amount of pain this week, and I found it really helps whenever the microphone's pointing the right direction. My apologies. For this tale, we're going to go back to April 30th of this year, 2022, Birdsboro, Pennsylvania. Now, this area that we're going to, this is going to be just north of French Creek State Park. That's about 15 to 20 square miles of dense, natural woodland. It's a large forest, and Pennsylvania forests, they're not just large, they're thick. It's hard to maneuver through most Pennsylvania forests. Now, the witness is going to go by the name MH. It's April, it's spring, and MH's 12-year-old daughter wants to learn about trout fishing. Now, they go up to Hay Creek, which runs right through French Creek State Park. They park at the north end, Hay Creek Road, and hike up into the old road past an active large quarry. They look at the quarry. I'm sure the daughter had a blast with that. I loved looking at quarries whenever I was a kid. Keystone Lime was a great place to go. But they go a half mile past that quarry. They find this nice spot to go fishing. It's nice, it's shallow. It's not super fast water, just semi-fast water. It's going to be a good place where MH's daughter can practice wading into the stream. They're not alone out there either. There's people walking, hiking, horseback riding, so they're not alone. And it is a gorgeous day. They're there for about 2 hours. MH is sitting on the bank, just enjoying the stream, watching their daughter learn how to fish. And that's whenever MH hears a loud crash. MH feels like it's a tree falling over behind them. But MH didn't hear any chainsaws. And this sounds like a big tree. Now, it's just this is really bothering MH. It seems very out of place. There's the loud bang of the tree falling, and then silence. MH lets the silence go for about 2 minutes, but then they stand up, and they look around the direction that the sound came from. Nothing. 30 minutes later, just a half hour later, the same thing happens again. MH feels like they want to get out of there. MH says to their daughter, let's start heading back. Let's find another spot to fish. They hear another crash closer to them. They walk 200 yards down the trail and they start hearing it again. They look up towards the quarry. See nothing. They see nothing. MH, trying to stay calm, doesn't want to freak out their daughter, says, let's cross the stream and we're going to go fish down around the bend. Now, the spot where you cross the stream, where MH is talking about, it's about 30 feet wide, really, really slippery. Rocks get worn smooth, algae grows on them. It can be tricky to navigate some of these waters. The water is a bit high for MH's daughter. They're about halfway across. And then it's tree branches breaking again. MH grabs hold of their daughter's hand to help her. They cross the stream. MH helps their daughter up. And that's whenever MH sees something moving in the distance in their peripheral vision. They look around. They don't see anything at first. And then in the distance, MH locks onto a 40-foot tall pine tree at the top of the quarry. This thing is swaying violently side to side, 5 foot in each direction. MH points it out to their daughter. Says, "What is that? Look." They're watching the pine tree shake for about 10, maybe 15 seconds. And then they see an arm reach out of the tree. It grabs a bird. MH thinks it might have been a turkey buzzard. That's whenever this thing jumps from the pine tree to a big oak tree about 10 feet away and starts climbing on the outside of the canopy of the tree. It kind of pivots around like a spider and then disappears into the branches of the tree. Now it's spring. The leaves are just starting to bud. They can see movement in the branches. This is going on. It's only 200, maybe 300 feet away from them. And the whole time, these branches are breaking. Large branches. About 10 more seconds of this flurry. And then this thing jumps out of the tree again. These trees are about 40 feet high. It falls another 15 to 20 feet on a 60-degree incline of rocks. This thing jumped out of a tree and fell about 60 feet. MH thinks whatever this is, it's dead. It hit super hard. Whenever it fell out of the tree, it landed on all fours. This creature is lying flat, dazed, winded, and then it stands up. It stands up on two legs and is about 10, maybe 12 feet high. MH thinks, my God, this thing should be dead. Doesn't know. He's thinking maybe it's a mountain lion, maybe a bear, maybe Bigfoot. This thing then goes back to all fours and jumps like a toad. Clears about 20 feet of ground in total. Each leap is about 8 to 10 feet off the ground, 20 feet. It's on all fours again. It drops the bird that it has in its left hand. This thing landed facing away from MH and their daughter. It's running away parallel to their left. It then reaches out with its left hand, grabs the turkey buzzard that it's caught, and pulls it back to its chest. The arms on this thing are at least 6 feet long. The hands are human-like. The legs are human-like. The hands, though, they have claws. 2, maybe 3-inch claws on the fingers. It turns its head to the side, and MH gets a good look at the face. It's bald from the neck up. It has a canine-like snout, an upper jaw with an overhang, very long upper teeth like fangs. It looks like a werewolf. MH thinks that whenever it stood up, heel to hip, it was about 6 to 7 feet. Hip to shoulder, another 3. Heel to top of its head, 10 to 12. The head was like a human's head, but it had pointed ears, like a dog. But not on top of its head. It had ears where a human has them, but longer and pointed. Fur like a deer length, very short, brown, gray, and black. The skin, where the skin is exposed, gray in color, very skinny. Almost like this thing is starving. It doesn't have a tail. No tail on this. This thing stands up again, takes a step, clears a 15-foot rock face. Takes another 5 to 6 steps, goes crashing through the woods. MH and his daughter never see it again. Now, MH says they're a no-fear kind of guy, but this scared him bad. Just standing there, frozen in fear. That happens for about 2 minutes. And then he snaps out. He's in adrenaline survival mode. Their number one concern is the daughter and getting them out there alive. Because this thing is running in the same direction as their car. His daughter's confused. He's scared. He pulls out his cell phone and he starts to call 911. But then he thinks better of it. Didn't think anyone would believe him. Now remember, other people were out there. So MH sees a few people on the way back. And he asked them, did you see a big animal come down this way? No. Now, the reason I picked this story is this. And I talk about this all the time. The shame of having an experience like this. The stigma around it. Was MH and his daughter at risk? Absolutely. Absolutely. This thing was a predator. They saw it kill something. MH had every good reason to call 911. If the stigma around the paranormal would be removed, MH could have called 911. MH could have said, I've seen something out here in the woods that is terrifying me. I can't explain it. Can you please send some police or a forest ranger down to escort me and my daughter out? Now, the missing 411 cases, I find them extremely fascinating. I think David Paulides exaggerates. I think that David Paulides sometimes obscures the facts of the case, but I've decided that he's doing much more good than harm with the missing 411 cases. Just as an example, missing 411, The Hunted. My lovely wife Ariana and I, we watched that a few weeks ago. So the first missing persons case, the mysterious missing persons case, is an 82-year-old hunter who has one eye, limited hearing, and a bad hand. The guy went missing. Now, I'm not making light of this. Please don't think I'm making light of this. But I don't think there's anything paranormal about an 82-year-old, one-eyed, nearly deaf man going missing in the woods. In my opinion, and that's all it is, Thomas Messick should have never been left alone in the woods. But are there mysterious cases, real, honest-to-God, strange, paranormal, missing persons cases? Absolutely. And maybe, if a few more of them would have called 911 without the shame, without the stigma attached to it, I mean, we'll never know, but maybe more of them would be here with us today. Our last case is going to take us to Kelvin, Arizona, October 1976. I want to give a little background before we actually talk about the case. I have someone who listens to the show. I consider them a friend. You know, a friend I've never met in real life, but maybe one day. Her name's Anna. Anna's been with us almost since the first show. Anna, by the way, I am looking into Richard D. Hall. It's a little trickier than I thought because there's a few Richard Halls that research the odd and the unusual. I am looking into it, though. But Anna had this theory that what if Earth is just a pit stop? Like it's a gas station, like we're a convenience store for aliens, like a tourist attraction. And that got me thinking about that. I mean, it's possible. It is absolutely possible. And I wanted to find a case that reflected that. And that's what's taking us to Kelvin, Arizona. Now, this is happening about noon. Remember, we're all the way back in October 1976. These 4 men are out digging in a turquoise vein in the desert. I can understand that. A bit of a rock hound myself. I have a few chunks of quartz, some other things here and there. Fossils, lots of fossils. I know how much fun it can be to just kind of get out there and see what you can see and find what you can find. They look up, though, and these 4 men notice a chunk of the desert floor moving across the sky. That, like, not a silver disc, not a cigar-shaped object, but out of the western sky, a silent chunk of the desert moving across the sky. This apparently camouflaged object, this chunk of the desert, then stops about a football field away from the 4 men and lands. A ramp descends down from this desert floor UFO, and 2 men come out. Now, two men come out of a camouflaged UFO. You would be thinking maybe silver jumpsuits, maybe some sort of uniform, maybe something akin to an astronaut's helmet. No, these guys are wearing shorts and t-shirts. Leisure clothing. And they walk down the ramp. And then after them, 2 women and 3 kids. So they just kind of play around for a little bit. The men go back into the craft and they bring out a barbecue. It's not like any barbecue they've ever seen, but it's a barbecue. The women take out a cooler. The men go back in. They bring out table, a chair, a couple of chairs. They kind of look like metal, right? The children go back in. They bring out a couple of toys. The women go back in. They're bringing out food. They're having a picnic. These entities, and honestly, this one kind of boggles me, because normally I think of these things as interdimensional, but the fact that they looked so human makes me think humans from the future. But at the same time, if you can disguise your craft like a chunk of the desert, then I'm sure you could disguise yourself as a family on vacation. The 4 men are just standing there, like, gobsmacked. And then one of the men from the craft, he sees the 4 men and waves, and he starts to walk over. And they go, they just say hi. He goes, hey. What are you doing? What you doing out? What brings you out here? Imagine seeing everything that these 4 men have seen, and then the entity, the creature, the human, walks up to you after you've seen all this. Go, hey, what you doing out here? The 4 men go, oh, we're looking for turquoise. And then the man from the craft says, I'll never understand human fascination with rocks. And then walks away. This family, or families, they pick everything up, they wave at the witnesses, and then they leave. Anna, if you're listening, and you probably are, Anna, I think you're on to something about Earth being a pit stop. I think you're on to something about Earth being just a place to kind of stop, stretch your legs, and walk on. Thank you for joining us here once again this week on Strange Pathways. Check us out on Twitter, Pathways Strange, TikTok, Strange Pathways Podcast. Our Instagram is also Strange Pathways Podcast. Head on over to our Facebook. We're going to have a few images dealing with the cases that we talked about here today. And if you'd like to email us, you can do so at strangepathwaysmail@gmail.com. We're going to have in an upcoming show, fingers crossed, we're going to have a story that was emailed to me. I'm just waiting for permission to use it. Either way, I'm going to be digging a little bit more into something called the Ozark Howler. As I said, thank you once again for joining us here on Strange Pathways. Take care of yourselves and each other.